The story begins in a quiet suburban neighborhood, where a young couple once believed that love could conquer everything. Emily and Daniel had met in college, two dreamers with nothing but hope and ambition in their hearts. She was studying art, and he was an engineering student with big plans but an empty wallet. Their relationship blossomed in simplicity, long walks, late-night talks, and promises whispered beneath the stars. Yet, as time passed, the real world began to challenge their fairy tale. Emily came from a comfortable background. Her parents had provided her with stability, and though they tolerated Daniel, they often reminded her that love alone couldn't pay bills. Daniel, on the other hand, worked part-time jobs just to keep his dream alive. He wanted to create something meaningful, something that would one day prove that he was more than just a poor dreamer. But dreams take time, and patience was something Emily began to lose. As their financial struggles grew, the tone of their conversations began to shift. Emily, once supportive and loving, started to compare Daniel to her friends' husbands, men who already owned houses and cars. Daniel noticed the change in her eyes. Love was slowly being replaced by disappointment. He tried harder, taking on extra shifts, skipping meals to save money, and even selling his old guitar to cover rent. But nothing seemed to satisfy her anymore. One evening, as rain fell heavily outside their small apartment, Emily finally said the words Daniel had been dreading. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I need stability, not dreams." Her tone was cold, her eyes already distant. Daniel stood there, speechless, the weight of her decision crushing him from the inside. The woman he loved more than anything had chosen comfort over commitment. She left without looking back, taking what little they owned and the last piece of his heart. For weeks, Daniel lived in silence. He didn't chase her. He didn't beg. Instead, he took that pain and buried it deep within himself, promising that one day he would turn it into purpose. Life moved on. Emily remarried a few years later to a wealthy businessman she met at a charity gala. Her new life was filled with luxury, expensive dresses, vacations, and photographs that showed the world how happy she was. But deep down, a small part of her still wondered about Daniel. Not out of love, but out of curiosity. She often wondered what became of the boy who once promised to build her a better life. Daniel, meanwhile, had disappeared from social circles. What no one knew was that he had devoted himself entirely to a project he had started years earlier, a groundbreaking renewable energy technology he had once dreamed of developing. For 5 long years, he lived in near isolation, working day and night, fueled by heartbreak and determination. He failed countless times. Investors rejected him. Friends doubted him. But Daniel refused to quit. Each failure taught him something new. Each rejection only hardened his resolve. Slowly, his invention began to take shape, a compact, efficient energy converter that could change the way small communities accessed power. When he finally perfected the prototype, fate took its turn. A global tech company caught wind of his design. Within months, Daniel was flown across the country to present it before a panel of investors. What started as a small idea soon became a revolution. Contracts were signed, patents were approved, and Daniel's company was born. Overnight, the man once labeled a failure became one of the most sought-after innovators in the world. Within a year, his net worth crossed $500 million. The same man who once counted coins for dinner now signed million-dollar deals before breakfast. But despite his success, Daniel remained humble. He didn't buy a mansion or a luxury car immediately. Instead, he built a foundation to help underprivileged students, those who reminded him of who he used to be. 5 years after the divorce, fate decided to write a new chapter in their story. Emily's husband's business began to crumble. Poor investments and risky deals drained their fortune, and the lavish life she once flaunted started to fade. The same friends who had admired her for marrying rich began to distance themselves. In desperation, she returned to her hometown, searching for familiarity, unaware that Daniel had become a legend there. It was during a charity event, ironically organized by Daniel's foundation, that their paths crossed again. Emily arrived wearing a borrowed dress, trying to maintain her dignity. As she entered the hall, her eyes fell on a man surrounded by reporters, businessmen, and local leaders. His confidence was unmistakable, his presence magnetic. When he turned, their eyes met for the first time in 5 years. Her breath caught. The man before her looked nothing like the struggling dreamer she had left behind. His suit was tailored, his posture strong, his gaze calm yet piercing. Daniel gave her a polite nod, the kind one gives to a stranger, not to a past lover. Emily's heart raced as she realized who he was. After the event, she approached him hesitantly. Daniel, she asked softly, her voice trembling. He smiled faintly. It's been a long time, Emily. The way he said her name, calm, detached, almost forgiving, made her chest tighten. She tried to make small talk, pretending that she had come to support the charity, but Daniel saw through the act. When the crowd thinned, she finally gathered the courage to ask what she truly wanted. You've done so well for yourself, she said, forcing a smile. I'm happy for you. He looked at her, the same woman who once broke his heart, and replied gently, life has a way of teaching us what really matters. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I made a mistake, she whispered. I didn't see who you were becoming. Daniel didn't respond right away. He glanced around the room filled with people his work had helped, then turned back to her. You didn't believe in me, he said softly. And that's okay, because I needed to learn to believe in myself first. The conversation ended there. He excused himself politely and walked away, leaving her standing alone amidst the echo of applause. That night, Emily cried, not out of love lost, but out of regret. She finally understood that wealth wasn't just about money. It was about vision, perseverance, and faith, the very things she had walked away from. Daniel, on the other hand, drove home that night in silence. He looked out at the city lights, remembering the boy he once was. Success hadn't erased his past, it had transformed it. He knew that forgiveness, not revenge, was the true measure of strength. Days later, he received a letter from Emily. It wasn't a plea or an apology, it was gratitude. She thanked him for reminding her of what she had forgotten, that love and patience are worth more than any fortune. Daniel smiled, placed the letter in a drawer, and moved forward with his life. In the years that followed, his company expanded globally. People began calling him a visionary, a leader who built not just wealth but purpose. And though his story was often told as a tale of revenge success, Daniel never saw it that way. For him, it was a story of transformation, a journey from heartbreak to hope. Emily eventually rebuilt her life, finding peace in simplicity. She volunteered at a local shelter, teaching art to children. Every now and then, she would see Daniel's name in the news, another milestone, another act of generosity, and she would smile softly, knowing she once loved a man destined for greatness. Time, it seemed, had healed what pride once destroyed. Daniel had become proof that sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as heartbreak. His fortune was never about proving her wrong, it was about discovering who he truly was when everything else was taken away. In the end, he stood as a reminder to everyone who ever felt underestimated, that silence, patience, and resilience can turn pain into power. And while Emily had lost the love of her life, she had gained a lesson that would stay with her forever. Never judge someone's worth by the weight of their wallet, but by the strength of their heart. And so, the man she left for being poor became the billionaire the world admired, not because of his money, but because he never stopped believing in himself when no one else did.